Hi everybody, welcome back to Explaining Acro. I'm Cassandra and this is Ben, and today we're going to be talking about a basic strength program for flyers. One of the best things that you can do for the long-term success of your acrobatic practice is implement a regular strength training program. As we've discussed on the channel before, practicing acro alone isn't always enough to get us to those more advanced skills that we're working on. But before we dive into strength training, I want to address a common concern that we hear from flyers. And it's this idea that strength training is going to make us bulky or make us too large. And there's a few things here. First is that gaining muscle takes time. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight, and especially for women due to our hormonal differences. And secondly, in acro, we are focused on the strength to weight ratio. So as you gain muscle, the number on the scale might go up, but that's okay. All of this muscle you're gaining is going to really help your performance and your endurance. With all of that being said, if you're doing a strength training program and you feel like you're getting too bulky, or your performance is being hindered due to the extra muscle or weight gain, then we can always dial back what you're doing and change it to something that seems more suitable. Ben has created numerous strength training programs for flyers, all based on their skill level and where they are at in their own journey. So today we're going to be sharing our basic strength training program for flyers, and this is a great stepping stone for anyone that's just beginning this strength training journey.
So let's start to talk about the program itself. Now, what I've built is a 2-day-a-week program that is designed to complement an existing acrobatic practice. We're training 2 days a week, so that means we're going to be doing full body every day. We're going to be training each muscle twice a week, which has been shown by research to be a more effective way of building muscle. Because this program is designed for novices or people who don't have as much strength training experience, our primary focuses are going to be on building a foundation of technique and overall muscularity. While for more advanced trainees, we might be focused more specifically on strength or power development, building that basic foundation of muscle is going to make you stronger and more powerful and things like that. And we can afford to train with a little bit of a higher rep range, which is going to allow us to have a better safety profile and really learn that technique. In this video, we're going to go through each of the exercises for each of the days in this program. However, there are some more details such as set and rep progressions, and this program, along with all of those other details, will be available for free on explainingacro.com. We'll have a link in the description down below that you can click to go and look at the full program. The exercises we selected for this program are a combination of general strength training exercises that are going to build a nice solid foundation, as well as a few things that are a little bit more acro specific and designed to help you in your practice. The exercises I've chosen here, you should be able to complete pretty easily at any standard commercial gym. However, I do have some options in there so that if all you have access to is a set of adjustable dumbbells, you should be good to go as well. So for each day, we're going to be doing 6 exercises that are going to be accomplished in 3 supersets. So the idea of a superset is we're pairing 2 exercises that we're going to be doing back to back with sort of minimal rest between exercise 1 and exercise 2. After you finish exercise 2, you can rest basically as much as you need in order to catch your breath and feel like you can do another good superset. The other concepts that I want to briefly introduce to you is the concept of reps in reserve. So if I do an exercise until like a bicep curl or something like that, until I can do 0 more repetitions or like I fail, that is 0 reps in reserve. Now, if I stop, 2 reps away from the point at which I don't think I'd be able to do another repetition, then I will have done this exercise with 2 reps in reserve. The general thing that I will like for you to do is to do your sets with 2 reps in reserve, except for the last set, which I would like you to take to failure. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. So reason number 1 is it's going to help you begin to accurately gauge your reps in reserve. So if you're doing your overhead press and you do 8 reps and you're like, yeah, I think I can do 2 more, but then on that last set, you actually do 12, that lets you know that, hey, next time I need to up my estimate a little bit. And similarly, if it's like, okay, I got 2 more, but you only get 1 more, then you need to bump it down a little bit. The other reason that we're doing that last set for failure is basically when we're doing our sets with a little bit left in the tank, it's really nice in terms of not having as much of a recovery tax, and it's still pretty stimulating, but doing a set all the way to failure does eventually result in more muscular recruitment, and that particular set will be more stimulative of muscle growth. Now, this program isn't meant to make you super sore, super tired, things like that, but we do want to really be focusing on muscular growth. So our first exercise on day 1 is going to be the incline dumbbell press. The purpose of this is to help build your shoulder and chest strength. I like the incline press because it translates well to both overhead and horizontal pushing type of movements, and it lets you get a really big stretch, which is important for muscle gain. So to start, you're going to be sitting on the bench with the bench in something like a 15 or 30 degree angle, but you can go up a little bit more if that feels more comfortable to you. You're going to have the dumbbells on your knees. You're going to brace your abs really hard, and then you're going to rock back in order to get the dumbbells up to your shoulders. From here, we can start the rep with the dumbbells already overhead. We're going to control the weight down. Really think about keeping our chest tall as we lower and pausing for a second at the bottom. From here, we're going to press up and overhead in a powerful but controlled manner. In general, with our exercises, we want to focus on a nice, slow, controlled eccentric or lowering portion of the exercise, because that's going to lead to some better results in terms of muscle growth as well as tendon strength, but focusing on power on the way up in order for us to develop our strength and power. If you don't have access to a bench or an incline bench, you can instead do deficit push-ups. Now, I really like the deficit push-up because you're getting an extra stretch on the chest and the shoulder, which is going to lead to better muscle gain. And really, one of the most common things I see when people doing push-ups is they're doing these baby sort of half rep type things, which Cassie will demonstrate. Yeah. So she's not going all the way down. 0, 0, 0, no reps at all right there. So instead, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be keeping a little bit of extra space for our chest to go. And if we can't do a full push-up, we are not too proud to do it on our knees. So she's going to lower all the way. I like to look up at the bottom just because it makes it a little bit easier to get the chest all the way there if you're not seeing the ground approaching. Pause for a second and push back up nice and explosively. I'm a pretty strong dude. 20 of these is certainly challenging. So yeah, no shame in doing them on your knees. These are going to be a really excellent strength builder for the entire upper body.
And as Ben was saying, I like to do these on my knees because the biggest focus for me is getting that stretch and working on the shoulder, which being on my knees still allows me to get that and go as deep as I can. Where on my feet, that's not as possible.
And you can get more reps.
Yeah, and as Ben said, I can get more reps doing it on my knees, which is just giving more volume to the shoulders, which is the focus here for me.
So we're going to be supersetting our incline dumbbell press with Romanian deadlifts. So basically, I'm going to have her start by holding the dumbbells nice and close to her legs. From here, she's going to think about keeping them pressed into her legs as she pushes her butt back. You can allow a little bit of bend in the knee, but we want to make sure that we're not doing this huge knee bend squat thing. We really want to make sure that we're keeping a lot of tension at the hamstrings. So we're focusing on hinging back and going as low as we can while not doing that excessive knee bend. The other common mistake that I see in this exercise is allowing the weight to come too far in front of you. This is going to put more stress on your back and less stress on your hamstrings. Now, if these are completely new to you, I'd recommend by starting with a resistance band. This is something you can do just for the first couple sessions until you start to feel comfortable. In order to get it set up, she's going to start by putting it around the back of her traps, back of her neck, and then she's going to stand on the band like so. From here, it's basically the same as it was with the dumbbells, except you don't have to worry about keeping them close to you. So here she's thinking about just pushing her hips back and sliding her hands along her legs. You want to focus on keeping that band tension basically as straight up as down as you can, and just trying not to allow the chest to come too far forward and the hips not to come back. The first exercise of our second superset is going to be the step up. This is a great exercise for flyers because it really emphasizes that kind of single leg strength that you need to use for standing on one foot or for things like pitching or climbing on bases and things like that. So in order to perform this exercise, she's going to hold some dumbbells in either hand, put her foot on, and stand up. Nice. And then she's going to control her descent as much as she can, allowing that knee to come forward a little bit. As you go comfortable with these, you can start to step up a little bit more explosively, but making sure that you maintain your balance. and always going down basically as slowly as you can. If you struggle to control this, you can always start by using a little bit of a lower box or step or bench or something like that. But over time, we really want to progress the height of this in order to help train the muscle at a more stretched position, which is going to lead to better muscle gains, as well as to give you more confidence when you're doing acro. You're often going to have to do some climbs where your legs are in kind of awkward positions. So the exercise that we're going to be pairing with this is the dumbbell row or a cable flexion row. I like these exercises for training the back because it's going to help train some of our rear rotator cuff muscles, as well as just lead to a bit more balanced muscularity. With both of these, we're going to be focusing on really rounding and stretching the back as we do this. This is going to both lead to better muscle gain and also translate pretty well to acro. So for things like a relocate or an inlocate or something like that, you're going to be pushing and extending there, and we want to make sure that these muscles are nice and strong. So for the dumbbell variation, you can absolutely use a bench or a rack or something like that. But the basic idea is the hand that's not holding the dumbbell is going to be on the box or the bench. You can have a knee up if you like. Doesn't really matter. But you're going to just really think about pulling that elbow up and back. Now, as she lowers the weight, she's going to allow it to really stretch, but she's doing a good job of not letting that hip on the same side drop. This is actually going to reduce the stretch on the muscle. So by keeping that hip nice and high, the lat attaches kind of at this rib here. We're maximizing the distance between basically the top of her arm and this point right there. And that is really excellent technique there. We're being slow and controlled on the way down and powerful on the way up. If you have access to a cable machine, I prefer this variation because it allows us to really practice that shape we're going to be making as we're entering into handstands in acro. So to start this, she's going to be nice and upright and pull, keeping her elbows kind of low again. And then as she extends, she's going to extend her arms, but then she's going to think about rounding, starting with her upper back, and then really reaching in order to get a big stretch. Yep, so she's doing a really good job here of allowing the weight to pull her kind of segment by segment and really allowing her back to flex. So she's doing a nice job here of keeping that low back nice and stable. If you want, once you've reached this point, you can fold even more and go into like kind of your pike and pancake and then pull back up. For our final superset on day one, the first exercise is going to be the overhead press. This is probably the most important single exercise for bases and flyers. It is an awesome shoulder builder, and it's going to make you nice and strong and nice and healthy. So I like to do this exercise with dumbbells, particularly when starting out, because it allows you to get a little bit more range of motion in the shoulder. I like to start like this with the palms facing each other, because if you have them out to the side like this, you kind of have to navigate around the ends of the dumbbells, which can be a little bit awkward. So she's going to start there, face the side now. Elbows nice and tight, and she's going to press overhead and back a little bit. So her hands rotated like that. Some people might find it more comfortable to keep the hands facing each other on the entire exercise. I don't really care what you do there, but I do really recommend having the hands facing each other at the bottom. She's doing a really good job here of leaning in and making sure that she's pressing straight overhead. A common mistake I see is people really arching as they're doing this. It can be a little bit less stable, as you saw there. It can involve the back more and the chest a little bit more when we really want to be focusing on our shoulders and really having this translate to things like our handstands. The exercise that we're going to be pairing with our overhead press is going to be some kind of abdominal exercise. Ideally, it's going to be a hanging leg or a hanging knee raise, because this is going to allow us to work a little bit on our grip as well as on our abs. However, if grip becomes too much of a limiting factor, we're going to show you some other variations. So for both the hanging leg and the hanging knee raise, the flyer is going to start by hanging, not yet. Is going to start by hanging either with their hands in an overhand grip or in a neutral grip. I don't really care which. From the bottom, the flyer is going to really think about tucking the pelvis and rounding the back in order to start to lift the knees, rather than just kind of leaning back with the entire upper body. So she's starting from a nice neutral position here. She's really tucking that pelvis and rounding the lower backs in order to get up. There's a little lean at the top, which is okay, but most of the work is being done by her hip flexors and her lower abs. The straight leg raise is a lot harder than the bent leg version. So, definitely choose the one that's appropriate for where you're at. So if you want to give your grip a break or make it a little bit easier, we can also do these lying on a bench like this. So you're going to start kind of up in a ball in order to kind of decide where you're going to be. I want the hips to be close to the edge of the bench or even off a little bit. You want to be holding on pretty tight behind you, either directly overhead like she's doing, or you can hold the sides by your head, whatever feels more comfortable. From here, we're going to be starting with our legs straight, kind of no matter what. And then we can either tuck and then again focus on rounding the back and tucking the pelvis, or doing that with our straight legs here. Really getting that stretch and controlling our way down and coming up powerfully, but not really skipping any moments along that way. Really focusing on this stretch in the abs is going to help a lot with things like our handstand line, and we're going to be building a lot of strength in our hip flexors and our low abs. Our first exercise for day 2 is going to be either the goblet squat or the back squat. Now, I like the goblet squat for teaching the squat because by having that weight in front of us, it really forces us to be a little bit more upright, and it really forces you to engage your core. Downside of the goblet squat is very quickly you're going to find that holding the weight in front of you becomes the limiting factor instead of your legs, which is what you're trying to train. So you're going to start by holding the dumbbell or kettlebell or whatever like this in front of you. Then you're going to have a slight break at the hips and squat straight down. Perfect. She's doing a nice job of keeping her back pretty straight here. Really what we're trying to avoid is to have excessive rounding of the back at the bottom. That's a little bit exaggerated, but if you go down like this and then really just kind of tuck the pelvis at the bottom, this is what we're trying to avoid. This can lead to a lot of pain, particularly under load. If you're doing this unloaded, not the biggest deal in the world, but when we're trying to squat for strength and with some weight on our back, we want to spare our spine. Now, if this is feeling good and comfortable, I highly recommend the high bar back squat as the primary strength builder for the entire lower body. Now, to set up, she's going to take her hands kind of just like, a thumb past the knurling over here. And she's going to think about putting the bar kind of on top of her shoulders and pretty high on her traps. Looks good. She's going to step out, walk the bar out. Again, this is going to start by a little break at the hips, and then she's going to squat and really think about keeping her legs out and allowing the knees to come past the toes. She's doing a really good job of keeping a tight back here and not rounding at the bottom. Now, depending on our hip anatomy, ankle flexibility, and a lot of things, you might actually run into some of that rounding at the bottom, and there are a few solutions that work really well for this. So the first are these, which are called weightlifting shoes. Highly recommend them. They're designed for use by Olympic weightlifters. They have these nice flat soles that are at an angle, so you're able to push through the whole foot into the ground. Not great for walking or running, but excellent for lifting weights. The nice fancy solution you have, you might have some kind of slant, either wedge thing like this. It might be a little bit longer, available at your gym, or you can always grab some basic weight plates and put them underneath your heels. And all of these things, really what they're doing is they're giving you a little bit of an elevated heel in a stable fashion, which is going to reduce the demands on your ankle flexibility and put you in a little bit more advantageous position in order to squat nice and low, knees over toes, and keep that back nice and tight. The exercise that we're going to be pairing with our squat is going to be the overhead press. Like I said, this is probably the single most important exercise, so we're going to be doing it both days. For our second superset on day number 2, the first exercise that we're going to be doing is either the dumbbell or the cable pullover. Now, this exercise is really great for training our lats, but also training our mobility in that overhead position, which is going to translate really well to handstands and honestly to things like tumbling as well. So to start, I like to do these with just kind of like the shoulder blades on the bench, head hanging off a little bit. So you're going to be sitting kind of perpendicular to the bench like this, get into a nice position. You might want to be a little bit more this way so that your head can rest kind of comfortably on the edge of the bench. I'll go a little bit more that way. Yeah, there we go. So you're resting a little bit, but we just have the shoulder blades here. Now you're going to start with the dumbbell just in front of you like that. If you want to have a little micro bend in the elbows to make it feel okay, that's totally cool. Just try and keep a consistent angle. And then from here, she's going to allow it to go super far overhead. You can have a little bit of arch in the back here, but you want to go until you feel a really powerful stretch and then bring the weight back up only to about here. You don't need to bring it all the way over your chest. You can keep it like roughly over your face. And then really stretch slow and controlled on the way down, and then bring it up nice and powerfully. The nice thing about this is if you get stuck overhead, you can either drop the weight or you can bend your elbows, which is gonna make it mechanically more advantageous, and you should be able to get the weight back up and over you. The other variation that I like, if you have access to a cable machine, is this kind of cable pullover or a lat prayer motion. So you're gonna start by holding onto the bar. You're gonna take 1 or 2 steps back, and then you're gonna drop your chest nice and low. From here, you're going to pull without raising your chest, pull down, and then as it gets close to you, you're going to lift that chest just a little bit so the cable doesn't hit you in your face. As it comes down, you're gonna drop your chest and your head and go until you feel a really big stretch in the lats. Again, initiate from here without any swing, lift the chest and the head in order to not get hit in the face, and repeat. So we're going to be supersetting our pullover variation with some kind of front raise. Now, front raises are really good for building our front delts and are really nice for being able to control that hand position, particularly for things like shoot throughs, inlocates, things of that nature. So I like the incline because it lets us put a little bit more stretch on our front delts at the bottom. So she's able to put the weights kind of behind her a little bit like this. And from here, she's going to think about lifting the weights up and overhead like that, and then controlling it on the way down. On the way up, you can stop roughly when the weight is vertical like this. You can go a little bit farther, but that's another exercise that we're going to get into. But really being nice and slow and controlled there. She's doing it with the thumbs up, which I think is a great technique. You can also do it with the back of the hand up, but that can sometimes lead to some shoulder pain. But if it feels better for you, I have no problems with it. I actually prefer the cable version of this exercise if you have access to a cable machine, because it leads to a little bit of a better resistance curve. For this, you're gonna set the cables at roughly hand height. You can do it with 2 cables at once if you have access to 2. You can also do it with a single cable. You're going to step forward into a lunge position, get a nice stretch on those kind of front delts and that biceps tendon, and then you're going to just lift the arms overhead. This cable machine, its lowest setting is a little bit heavy, but here ideally you're trying to keep the arms straight, really lift the arms up overhead in front of you like that and control it back. Because she's able to lean that chest forward, she is able to really drive it all the way overhead here, which is even better for that handstand. For our final superset, we're going to be doing the suitcase carry as our first exercise. I think this is one of the best exercises for both bases and flyers. Reason for that is that it is going to help really train our grip in just holding the kettlebell to begin with. And because we're holding it on just one side, we're having to really actively work using our QL and obliques and things like that in order to not be folded over. This translates super well to things like single leg balances, single arm balances, and really just in general, having a lot of rotational integrity and strength. So she's gonna take a weight in her hand, kettlebell, dumbbell, doesn't really matter, and she's gonna go for a walk. Now, details on loading, times, durations, and things like that, that's all gonna be on explainingacro.com, link in the description for like the full program. But the idea here is she's gonna choose a weight where she can go until she can only do it for another 5 or 10 seconds. She's not going all the way to failure, but she's going within 5 or 10 seconds of failure, and ideally something around like a 30-second total duration. Main common error that we're trying to avoid with this is to avoid leaning super heavily to the side that we're holding it on. We're trying to resist that, so we're trying to stay super strong through that opposite side. There's going to be a little bit of natural tilt that happens with this, but we're really not trying to be pulled completely over, and we're also not trying to over-exaggerate on that one side. We're trying to like do something that feels pretty upright and nice and engaged. The final exercise on day 2 that we're going to be supersetting with our suitcase carries is the Y raise. These exercises are really great for all of those rear shoulder muscles and keeping our shoulders nice and healthy. And again, working on that active end range shoulder flexibility. This is going to help your handstands a ton. So for this, I like to have the bench set at something like 30, 45 degrees. Find something that feels comfortable. You're going to rest your chest against the bench. I like to really push my feet into the ground to feel nice and stable. And then you're going to lift those up overhead. It doesn't have to be all the way together like a handstand. They can be out slightly to the side. Thumbs up on this for sure, feels most comfortable for me. If you want to do it with the backs of your hands to the ceiling, you definitely can. But again, you might feel some kind of shoulder impingement. She's doing a really good job of lifting powerfully up and then controlling that weight all the way down. Thanks so much for joining us as we went through this kind of basic strength training program for flyers. Even if you don't do this exact program, again, go to explainingacro.com and we'll have that available for free for you there. I hope you found some movements and concepts that you can start to incorporate into your training. If you're a little bit more advanced or you want to take things in a bit more personalized approach, I do offer one-on-one coaching, either in person, remotely, whatever, as well as customized program design. If you have any questions or things like that, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to clarify any of these things. And if you want to see some of this more like general fitness and strength training focused content with an acrobatic tilt, really do let us know. As always, subscribe to the channel so that you get notified of more videos in the future, and hope to see you next time.